Well, good morning, everyone, all across North America and even the good people of Lismore, Australia. Hello. Good morning. Good morning. Frontline public works professionals all across the continent. What's going on, High Point? How about Lexington? How about the good people of McMinnville? Vallejo! Vallejo! What's up, Vallejo? Hey, Vallejo, not today and not even June, but July is when my family and I come to Six Flags. So, if you're near Six Flags, I'll let you know when I'm going to be there, and let's all hang out. Seriously. Let's all hang out. Now, side note, I always do this. If I'm near a town that's a part of the program, I always come by the Public Works Department and say hi. Not that they always want me to come by, but I always do come by. Anyways, if you haven't been to Vallejo, California, go on down. Great little town. Got a whole bunch of fun there with Six Flags, and they don't have Shamu. It's not Shamu. It's some other orca thing. I don't know either. Okay, anyways, back to what we were talking about. Hey, happy Friday. And whether you're on the East Coast, 11 a.m., or whether you're on the West Coast, 8 a.m., it's still the morning. Unless, of course, if you're in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and it is noon. Because they're 4-hour time difference. Anyways, all right, crazy this morning. What are we doing? Okay, entering in the next competency. Now look, here's the reality. The reality is that every couple hundred years in Western history, society rearranges itself. That's a reality. That's a historical fact. That every couple hundred years, things rearrange. Just the way it is. I don't know why. That's above my pay grade. I just know that it happens. And Drucker was right. Remember, that was that Drucker quote. In addition to that, because of that time of transformation, that puts significant pressure on you and me. Not just in our work life, but just in life in general. Why? Because the ways that we've been doing things all of a sudden aren't as effective as they've been before. The approaches, the style, the mindset. All of a sudden, if you're Covey, you'd say the paradigm has shifted. Well, I don't know about all that. I don't know about paradigm shift. I just know things have changed. So then it's incumbent upon me, if I'm going to make it, to ask myself, well, wait a minute. If everything's changing around me, what's the best approach to make it today? What's the best approach to be successful today? What's the best approach for me to be a successful leader today? And when I talk about leader, I don't just mean that you have some title. I mean that I got to lead my kids, I got to lead my spouse, I got to lead in my neighborhood, I got to lead on the Little League team, I got to lead in my place of faith, I got to lead. I got to lead. So over the last few weeks, we've been talking about, okay, things have rearranged, and all of a sudden, I'm challenged to ask myself, are the ways that I'm doing things the ones that are most effective today? And if they're not, then maybe I need to think about changing. Because it's in my own best interest, the best interest of those around me, the best interest of my community, to exhibit the qualities, attributes, and competencies that the times require. Then we added another layer to that, and we said to ourselves, well, wait a minute. That's true for an individual, but isn't it also true for one of the most important public entities in the community, Public Works? Because Public Works is what allows a free society and a civil society to be free and civil. No, what do you mean? Well, wait a minute now. Clean water, pretty important. You got to have well-maintained infrastructure. That's what makes a great society a great society. And I'm not just talking about in North America. You do an exploration of history. You go back to the Romans. You go back to the Dutch. You go back to the Spaniards. You go back to the English. I mean, you just walk through all the great societies. They had phenomenal infrastructure for their day. The Dutch had when the Dutch Empire was the biggest thing going, they had phenomenal infrastructure for their day, just as the Romans did. So infrastructure obviously is a key. Well, we don't feel like that. They froze our salary last 5 years. Okay. And I am sorry. I'm sorry. I don't think that's a wise move. But I know this. That's no indication of how vital infrastructure is and quality infrastructure. What are you saying, Ian? I'm saying that the work that you do in your department are important. So watch this. We're in changing times, and we have to ask ourselves, are the way we doing things the way the times require, what the times require? Wow, I'm in a profession that is critical not just to this generation, but the generation to come. And collectively, my profession touches every citizen from cradle to grave. Holy crap. I must have a responsibility to do something of value because other people are counting upon me. Yeah. 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 And that's why we're doing this, right? Because you guys are important and vital. You make a significant impact. You create the platform, the framework, the infrastructure for community to happen. You touch every citizen from cradle to grave. You make an impact in this generation and the one to come. And at the end of the day, you're important. I didn't say you feel important. I didn't say you always get treated important. I didn't say any of that. I just said that for a free society to work, we've got to have great infrastructure. And you're a part of that. So, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about a couple of the leadership approaches that, if utilized, I think will allow you to be more successful in today's changing times. Agent of change, systems thinker, and now the next. What's the next one? Catalyst for responsibility. Huh? Catalyst for responsibility. See, I think in these changing times, we all need to be able to take ownership and responsibility, and we need to assist others in taking ownership and responsibility. That's the tough part when funds are low and debts are high. When you're in a challenging circumstances, when you don't have tremendous resource, and yet the work still needs to get done. Somehow, some way, everybody's got to step up to the plate. Now, on the other side of that can be a little bit of bitterness, can be a little bit of anger, can be a little bit of hurt, and that could be justified, right? Could be justified. We got screwed over. How come I'm having to do more work? I don't get why we don't get pats on the back, or whatever. Who knows? But the challenge is that the work still's got to get done. And that's a challenge for you, and that's a challenge for me. Responsibility. It's a funny thing, this responsibility. There was a time long ago, long gone by. Side note, I'm meandering to a point. We're meandering. So just hang in there. A long time ago, responsibility wasn't even a question. Say, what do you mean? Well, noticing this, I don't know if I like this shirt. Responsibility wasn't a question because you moved to an area, and I moved to an area, and you moved to an area, and I moved to, and we all moved to an area. And all of a sudden, a bunch of wolves came and tried to eat our kids. And so it wasn't like this, hey, I don't think I'm going to go and help with the wolves today. It's not my responsibility. And to all of you animal lovers out there, I'm not advocating the killing of wolves. However, if I lived on the open plain and I was trying to have my farm and the wolves came to eat my children, I probably would do something about that. So all of a sudden when the wolves came, you and I stepped up. We didn't have a choice. We had to survive. We didn't have a choice to act on our responsibility. Or when the snow came and buried us all, we didn't have a choice. We all had to step up and try to figure out a way to get out of the snow. My point is that there was a time when you were either responsible or you died. Right, Jeff? I mean, you were either responsible or you died. Everybody pitched in, everybody helped out, or you died. Then it started to move. We started to move, and we became more civilized. We became more civilized along this continuum. And we started to say to ourselves, oh, things are pretty good. I have more than I had before. Someone else is doing things for me. Someone else is providing things for me. And I have a little bit of money taken away from me to provide for that common good. And that's cool, because it makes my life a little bit easier. And so I get to focus on my life while somebody else is doing all that necessary work. While someone else is defending me, while someone else is making sure I got a toilet, right? Even if that's an outhouse, somebody's taking care of the outhouse for me. And someone's making sure my wagon, that the ride's not too bumpy, right? And that the boardwalk that I walk down is maintained. And that when I get married, there's a record of it, and we're not keeping that record in my barn, right? I mean, that's the evolution. And then we got to a point where it was, hey, I'm going to be so disengaged from it that I'm not going to be involved at all. I'm not going to be involved at all. Fact is, I'm not going to even know what's going on because I'm watching American Idol or Canadian Idol. I'm watching Hockey Night in Canada or Monday Night Football. I'm not even going to know what's going on. Life is so good that I don't even know what's going on. Now, I stop and I think to myself, wow, when you lay it out like that, it's easy to see where responsibility went. It's easy to see where self-reliance went. It's easy to see where self-determination went. It's easy to see that. It's easy to see why people aren't responsible. I think you would agree with me in today's day and age. People aren't as responsible as they used to be. So all of a sudden there's a time of transformation. Schwang. And people don't know how to react. People don't know what to do. People don't know how to move. People aren't sure. They're looking to institutions and others to fix everything. They're not getting fixed. But they forgot the basic fundamental of what made a free society free and great. Responsibility. Well, how do you know that to be true? This book right here. So what's that book? It's the story of the first democracy. And the funny thing about that story of the first democracy, Athens, Periclean Athens, where the beginnings of democracy came from, one of the guys that started this thing, now it's evolved quite a bit, and it was a very rudimentary and basic democracy. It's not the republic that we see today. But in its essence, it was that regular people can have some say in determining their fate of their community. Well, that was a unique concept, self-determination, that regular people, not highly educated people, not philosophers, not kings, but some regular people, shop owners, farmers, and the like, could have some say in where things went. Now, Athens was a true democracy. Today we have mostly republics in North America. We have a republic in North America on both sides of the border, basically. We could have a big argument, but in basic terms. So that was unique. That was unique. That was different, never been tried before. So what did those guys say that it took? Listen to this. If Athens would appear great to you, most historians say it was one of the greatest communities in the history of mankind. From it came geometry, arts, culture, democracy, Plato, Socrates. I mean, all of the stuff so much of the stuff that we built Western society on came out of that Athens. Listen to what this guy said. He said, if Athens would appear great to you, then consider that her glories were purchased by valiant men who understood their responsibility and acted on their duty. So basically, this guy was saying, if you think that our town's good, our town of 250,000 people, which was a big town back then, if you think our town of 250,000 is something special, then consider this. Then consider it takes guys and gals that will act on their responsibility, that will understand it, and then act on their duty. Well, most people say Pericles is one of the greatest leaders in history. And I'm not the sharpest pencil in the box nor the brightest bulb in a chandelier. Not the sharpest tool in the tool shed. They used to call me sack of shovels, okay? Not very bright. But I know this. I know you got to look at examples. And this guy Pericles is a pretty damn good example. And he says, hey, you know what? If you want to do something great with a group of people, then all the people in the group had better act on their responsibility. Now, long setup, right? 19-minute setup or 18-minute setup. But to get you to think about something, this concept of responsibility, and that's what it takes at any time, but especially when times get tough. Now, I can honestly say, as I look across North America, that in many instances, we've lost this concept of what is my responsibility in my community, in my workplace, in my home, in my neighborhood. And when I say that, I don't say that I'm not accusing people, I'm not attacking people. I'm just thinking of myself. What am I responsible for? Well, I'm responsible to vote and pay my taxes. Beyond that, that's all you're getting from me. Really? Is that how we build a free society? That wouldn't have worked when we had the wolves coming out and the snow piling up. That wouldn't have worked. We would have died. We would have died. Ian will take care of the wolves today. I would have died. I'm not saying we're going out hunting wolves, but I am saying this, that are there some things that you and I could do to act on our responsibility to a greater degree? So this idea of being a catalyst for responsibility is the next competency, and we'll unpack it for the next 3 weeks. Talk about it in conceptual terms, but also talk about it in some very basic terms, because I think it's what the times require. Ian, I'm already responsible. I'm the responsible one amongst these crazy people. Okay, then how do we act as a catalyst to get others to take a little bit more responsibility? See, that's a nuance, isn't it? So it's not just about me being responsible. It's also about me helping others to move to greater responsibility and ownership. That's why it's called being a catalyst for responsibility. Not by thumping them on the head with some ideology. That's not going to get anybody to take greater responsibility. You're no good, and you need to be more responsible. Well, who the hell in today's day and age is going to accept that? Like, yeah, thanks for telling me I'm a piece of junk. Nobody's going to do that. Somehow I got to bring them along. So it's two parts. How do I act on my responsibility, and how do I act as a catalyst for others to get a little bit more involved than they were the day before? I think that's a necessary skill if we're going to be effective today. So let's look at that self-survey. Always take the self-survey, right? We always take that self-survey. I believe I have a responsibility to myself and my family. Now, you might say that that's trite. Well, of course that's true. Really? Is that true in today's society? Now, I'm going to say this, and it's going to come out wrong, and I don't care. Can you imagine if in the United States of America, forget about Canada right now, the United States of America, what if every guy now, I'm talking to the guys, what if every guy stepped up and acted on his responsibility to the child they fathered? What do you think would happen, Jeff? How much would we reduce social ills? How much would we increase the public coffers because we're spending money on people not taking care of their kids? Well, you're attacking. I'm just making an observation. So maybe it's not so obvious. I believe I have a responsibility to myself and my family. Some guys and some gals don't believe that. They don't believe they have a responsibility. I believe I have a responsibility to my coworkers in organization. Do you believe that in the depth of your heart? That you have a responsibility to your coworkers to come to work and be sharp and be crisp and do things well? Or are you just going through the motions of life because somebody offended you and somebody made you mad and somebody treated you poor? I believe I have a responsibility to my community. Those first three questions, in my opinion, are the essence of what make a free society work. If you don't believe those three things, I got a responsibility to me and my family. I got to take care of me and my own. I got a responsibility to the people I work with in my organization, and I have a responsibility to my community. If people don't get that in the depth of their heart, the free thing doesn't work. The free thing doesn't work. Plato would be right, right? Plato would be right. Plato said the free thing doesn't work. He said, he looked around his Athens and said, this is ridiculous, all this freedom crap. These people can't handle it. These people are idiots. They're not educated like me. And because they can't handle it, well, only a few people should be in charge. I like the people. He didn't hate the people. He was just saying they can't handle it. Well, you know what's funny? If you don't have those three things right there, you're right. You can't handle it because that's a necessary ingredient. That I have a responsibility to myself, to my family, to my community, my organization. I believe I have the knowledge and experience and skills to act on my responsibility. See, that's the funny thing. Responsibility. I have the ability to respond. Sometimes that's the barrier. Well, I don't have what it takes. You turn on the TV, you open up your search engine on your computer, you listen to the radio, you hear of the tragic, crazy, horrific, heinous things that are going on every day, it seems like now. Every day. You know what's funny? Check this out. Guy walks in and kills 7 people, it's not even big news anymore. Like now, the threshold is 20. If you kill 20, you get on the front page of Yahoo. Kill 7? Not so big. It's crazy. Isn't it crazy? And it makes you and I go like this. What the heck? It makes you and I go like this. Wow, remember when the days used to be like, or, man, I can't believe it's gotten so bad. Every once in a while, though, somebody says, hey, you know what? I have the knowledge, experience, and skill to do something. They acknowledge that they have the ability to respond. I actively value and seek diverse viewpoints and perspectives. See, I can't be a catalyst for responsibility unless I first understand that people are going to see things different than me. People are going to see things different than me because they have different life experiences, backgrounds, talents, and interests. So very simply, you got a problem in the workplace. There's a problem. Piece of equipment, the way we're doing things, the process of getting a piece of paper from here to here to here to here to here, or whatever. And it's just not working very well, and it's making everyone frustrated. And everybody gets in a room to talk about it. And as everybody's in the room talking about it, an argument breaks out. Now, maybe it's not an argument, but it's like, well, what about this? And then all of a sudden we walk out of the room and nothing got fixed. Why? Because everybody brought different perspectives, different points of view in the how would we fix that. And then we start arguing about the how we'll fix it. And we forgot about the why we needed to fix it. So all of a sudden the contentiousness around the how becomes more vital and important to everybody than the why. Now, you stop and think about that and apply that over national politics on both sides of the North American border. I'm not exactly sure what it's like in Australia. Sorry, Liz Moore, I'm not in tune to that every day. But I got to believe it's probably fairly similar. And so we get so caught up in arguing about the how that the why didn't compel us to move through that and compromise and work through. Well, the same thing happens in the workplace. Everybody gets all up in a tizzy, arms crossed, all grumpy, and then we go back to the workplace and we go back to our workplace we had tried to solve the problem, but we go back to our workplace and the problem still persists. And then everybody does this. Nothing ever changes. Nothing ever changes. Well, when you actively value and seek other people's points of view, you start to move to the middle. You start to move to the middle. I encourage others to contribute to their workplace. Perfect example is this. 5 of you, 8 of you, 10 of you sitting watching right now. There's somebody in the group doing this. That is freaking stupid, man. Ridiculous. This guy, this chubby brown guy, what's he talking about? And then somebody starts taking notes. What are you taking notes for, man? You really believe this is nonsense, man? And then everybody goes like this. Everybody puts their pen down because they don't want to get ridiculed. So there is a way that you can impede others taking responsibility, and there is a way that you can encourage it. Now, to that guy or gal that's grumpy, jaded, and even crusty, and doesn't want anybody else to learn because he's got his own thing going on, let me just say this. Please listen very, very closely. And I say this with all the love in the world. Shut up. Just shut up and let other people, if they want to advance themselves, if they want to improve themselves, then just shut up. And I mean that with love. Just keep it to yourself. Don't, rain on somebody else's parade if they're excited and motivated and they want to further themselves. Let them do that. And if you got your own issues and you're grumpy and you're angry and all that stuff, and maybe you're justified. Maybe you're justified in your anger and bitterness. Maybe you did really get screwed over, excuse my language. Maybe you did. But that doesn't mean you got to rain on somebody else's parade, man. That lady picked out one thing and she wanted to be better at it and she's working on it. Or that guy picked out one thing and he's working on it. So don't beat him up and don't beat her up and don't sit in the back of the room and poke at people. That's not right. And frankly, that's just weak, man. That's just weak. How many of you know somebody like that? Raise your hand. How many of you are that person? No. Don't do that. I'm committed to generating engagement and buy-in in others. So how do I assist? What steps can I take to assist to get everybody involved? Not what barriers do I put up, not what divisions do I create, but what do I do to get everybody on the team? And how do I, as a teammate, foster greater team? Now, why is that important? That's important because it lowers stress. That's important because it makes the 8 hours or 7 hours or whatever it is easier, or 10 hours if you're on a 410. Or it makes it easier. It makes the journey easier. I'm receptive to change and foster receptiveness in others, and foster that receptiveness in others. Do I walk around grinding down the supervisor and grinding down the leadership and just grinding everybody down and just spreading discontent? Do I roll my eyes every time the supervisor says something and mumble something under my breath? If I do, then score yourself 1 on this. I can work within a team. I will take ownership in tasks given to me. I understand excellence and take pride in achieving it. I believe my work is a reflection of me. I actively support and celebrate others for their hard work and commitment. Do I genuinely appreciate good work? And when I see it, do I celebrate it? When I see it, do I high five it? Do I pat it on the back? Do I thank it when I see great work? Now, where did you score yourself in that? And I'm being tough today. There's no doubt, man. There's no doubt. And it's not just for you, it's for me too. And frankly, it's for everybody that's on our team here. Responsibility. Without it, we cannot have a free society. It will not work, period. The thing will crumble from underneath. How do I know that? Look at the first one. And what they said was the key. You know, what's the old Benjamin Franklin quote? Sir Franklin, Benjamin, what do we have? A democracy, if we can keep it. Well, what was he saying? And I'm not taking a political stance. He was just saying, well, if everybody acts on their responsibility, this thing might work. But if people stop acting on their responsibility, then the thing's going to crumble, man, quick. Okay, let's move into it. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about this concept in an attempt to help you either take a greater ownership and responsibility of what you do or be a catalyst for others, or both. There are some basic fundamentals to doing this. And remember, the ultimate outcome will be that we'll have a more effective workplace, we'll have less stress in our workplace, and the ride, the journey will be better. Now, I can't control that your wages have been frozen. And I'm sorry that they have. I can't control that people have been laid off, if that's your situation. And I'm sorry that they have. I can't control that people don't appreciate your hard work, your energy, your dedication. People are always talking about first responders. Oftentimes it's public work professionals that are first responders because they got to get the trees out of the road so the cop car can come by. When we talk about essential services, clean water is pretty essential. Just ask the people who live in villages in third world countries that are dying because the water's not clean. And on and on and on. Well, not everybody sees that. So I understand the difficulty. And yet, we got something to do. So, responsibility is about seeing that. It's about wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to discern what is true, what is just, and what is lasting. I had to look that up. Not very bright. Isn't that funny? Wisdom. The ability to discern what is true, what is just, what is lasting. They say that wisdom is the guy that plants the little seedling in the ground, nurtures that seedling, protects that seedling, pours their life into that seedling, even though he may never partake of the shade of that great tree. That he pours himself into that seedling nonetheless, because he knows others will have the opportunity to partake. Even though they'll never know he did that work, he knows that they'll have a little bit more joy because they can lay under the shade of that tree. Well, public works is kind of like that, man. Public works is kind of like that. The school bus going over the bridge, and those kids inside are safe because some public work professional did his job well. Or the commute is easier because that guy in the plow did his job well. Or on the planning and engineering side, the community is more safe and the quality of life is higher because somebody did their job well. All of those things combined, all the way down to the guy simply handling the mixing station properly, so we get the best use of those cleaning chemicals at the lowest cost. I mean, that's that small stuff, right? Responsibility. Here's some things I want you to think about. A person of responsibility. What are the key ingredients? You do things with excellence, and others can trust you to do so. You do things with excellence, and others can trust you to do so. Trust. It's a funny thing in a team. It's a funny thing in a team. Over a period of time, people have come to trust you or not. Over a period of time, people know what they can expect. Now, you can say one thing, and we talked about this. Remember, we talked about this last time when we talked about, we judge ourselves on our intentions and others on their actions. People can almost guarantee what they're going to get from you after they've worked with you over a period of time. If someone can't trust you, you can circle that word. If someone can't trust you, what do they end up having to do? They end up having to do a little bit more work so that they don't get burned by your actions. If someone can trust you, know what they're going to get from you, know what you're going to deliver consistently, then that burden comes off of them, and they can just focus on what they do. So think about that stress, that energy, that effort. Life is tough enough. I don't need to add additional stress and effort that's unnecessary. You think about in your workplace how many times you have to do a little bit more because someone else can't do their own. And we don't mind that every once in a while. But when that becomes consistent over a period of time, that's like a burr under our saddle. It gets to us. You do things with excellence. Now, what's the funny thing about excellence? So that's kind of sometimes in the eye of the beholder. And that's why standards are so important. That's why departmental standards are important. That's why industry standards are important. Some of you are APWA accredited departments. A standard. Because your version of excellence and my version of excellence might be two different things. It may be totally different. So it's important for us, it's incumbent upon us as frontline professionals. If you're not clear of what excellence is or what the standard is, what do you got to do? You got to ask somebody. What's the standard? What's the standard? I need to know what the standard is. See, that forces your leaders to establish some standards. When you start asking for standards, we need some standards. We need to know what excellence looks like. We need to know what the right way to do this around here is. Because there's nothing more frustrating when guys are doing 7 different ways. We're all doing it 7 different ways. And we're not all clear on what good is or what winning looks like. A person of responsibility. You know you're a person of responsibility when you're happy to accept accountability for your actions. It's like my little 9-year-old. Nia, is your homework done? Well, Mommy didn't sit down and help me. What? Mom didn't sit down and help me. She was watching Survivor. I said, so your homework's not done. That's right, my homework is not done. Why is your homework not done? Because Mommy was watching Survivor. Well, why? What? My wife. No. So here's my point. When I say happy to accept accountability for your actions, this is my thing. It's mine. It's a direct reflection of me. That's an attitude. That's a mindset. This is mine, and it's a direct reflection of me. Well, as soon as I step to that level, it's a direct reflection of me. And the only thing I can worry about is this thing that's a direct reflection of me. And I'm not going to worry what other people are doing, because I'm going to do this thing, and it's a direct reflection of me. I start to earn people's respect. When I take that kind of ownership of something and give it the best that I can give it, I expand my sphere of influence because people start to respect me. And that's the first step in being a catalyst for others to take responsibility. See, I'll never be a catalyst for others to take responsibility if people don't respect me. I can't bang them on the head enough with my ideology. I can't shame them enough. I can't point out their deficiencies hard enough to get them to change. But as soon as people start respecting me, now I got a shot to move them to greater responsibility. So where does that begin? Me accepting accountability for my actions. People respect that. It's a step towards others. It's a step towards being that catalyst. You know you're a person of responsibility when you make a mistake, you correct it, and you make no excuses. That's a continuum. Somebody points out a deficiency, you drop the ball. You go, you're right. The ball got dropped there. And I was responsible for that ball. You know what? That's great feedback. Thank you so much. Let me get better at it. It should be that clear. Why? Because it's not about defending yourself. Why do people defend themselves? Why do people argue about stuff like that? Just because they're insecure, or because they feel threatened or attacked, or they feel like they're being picked out and singled out. There's a lot to those human dynamics. But when you have clearly established standards, when people feel like they're valued, that helps to a greater degree me be okay with you pointing out my deficiency. But set aside that. Set aside that there are no standards and people aren't valuing you. That doesn't absolve yourself of the responsibility that when a mistake has occurred, are you willing to step forward and say, that's mine, that's on me, thanks for the feedback, let me get this thing fixed. The beauty of that is it fosters respect. Now again, why is this important? Because it's these little things that diffuse a team and that make work a grind. Work a grind. You can be in difficult and challenging times. You can be in tough budget constraints. But if everybody on the team is working together well, it makes the journey easier. So these are some of the things that contribute to making the journey easier. And what's interesting is when the journey is easier, even though it's difficult times, good ideas come out. And when the journey is easier, even though we're in difficult times, somebody innovates and creates. And it's an upward spiral. Just like when we're in difficult and challenging times, and there is some friction amongst the team, and there is a lack of respect, guess what? It's a downward spiral. It actually just gets worse. So someone could argue that these are concepts that are just kind of out there in the never, the altruism zone. And I would say no, they're very practical, because it's the stuff that makes the grind a grind. And it then actually goes downward. Or we can try to make the journey a little easier and actually start to create an upward spiral, and we have control of that. So when you make a mistake, do you just stand up and say, I made a mistake, and then take steps to correct it? Okay, Ian, what are the keys to the steps to correct it? Go back to the change continuum. Go back to the change continuum. right? The change continuum. Remember that sequence, that 6-step sequence to change? Remember that was the willingness, the education, the understanding, the action, the accountability, and the analysis? Remember that? Remember that? So that when you have a process, you have a system of what to do when the mistake is made and actions need to be corrected. You push it through that change continuum. I had a nice email exchange from a lady in Sudbury, Ontario yesterday, and we were going through, and she was talking to me about the one thing that she wants to pick out, and then she's like, well, how do I use this one thing sheet? I'm not exactly clear. And I directed her back to the change continuum. Those two things go hand in hand, everybody. That I pick out one thing that I want to change, and then I push that through the change continuum. That's why we went over that change continuum first. Because now you have a process that when you do have something you need to improve on, you have a process for improving on it. And again, there's no greater respect that you can gain. There's no greater way to gain respect than when someone points out that you need to work on something, and 6 months later or 3 months later or whatever, you're better at it. People respect that. Finally, you use smart choices with your thoughts, words, and actions. That's good. Obviously, we need to be a little bit more responsible in our typing. Write that in. You make smart choices with your thoughts, words, and actions. Freedom of speech always kills me. What do you say? What do you mean? You don't think we should have free speech? No, I think we should have free speech, but I think people should think through some responsibility before they just start speaking. So, you know you're a person of responsibility when you disengage the clutch between your thoughts and your mouth. Just because you can say everything doesn't mean you should say everything. Just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should do everything. And what's the linchpin there? Responsibility. I'm free. I can do whatever I want. You're right, you are. So choose wisely. I'm free. I can say whatever I want. You are. So choose those words wisely. I'm free. I can think whatever I want. You're right. So choose those thoughts wisely. Because that's called responsibility. When I start to think of my actions and how they might impact others, not just saying, I'm free so I can do whatever I want and let the chips fall where they may, that's not responsible. That's irresponsible. Well, it's true in the workplace. The roll of the eyes, the smirk, the crossing of the arms, the chuckle behind somebody's back, the spreading of a rumor. Oh, sure, you can say that stuff. It's a free land. I can say what I want. Yeah, you're right. But is it responsible to do that? And when you extrapolate those actions out to their logical end, do they bring any benefit to anyone else? Or how about those words that you say? Do those words that you say build others up or tear others down? Do they bring any redeeming value to the environment or to the conversation, or the work environment, or to the conversation? Well, if they don't, isn't that just kind of irresponsible? See, that's the funny thing about life. Any monkey can follow the written law. Any monkey. Literally, we could train a monkey to stop at the stop sign. We could train a monkey to go the speed limit. We could train a monkey to follow those basic laws. But it takes an enlightened person to follow the unwritten laws. The unwritten law of civility, of just being nice. The unwritten law of going out of our way to help our fellow man. The unwritten law, the spirit of the rule. Not just a letter. The spirit of your job description, not just a letter. Now, I don't mean to sound like I'm preaching today, but frankly, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that people aren't thinking of these things. And that's why, in my opinion, things are going to hell in a handbasket quick. Because these things aren't on our radar screen. But you know what's on our radar screen? Kim Kardashian's on our radar screen. Or the guy she married, and all that nonsense is on our radar screen. And both figuratively and literally, our infrastructure is falling apart. Responsibility. The challenge for you and me is, it can't just stop with me being responsible. somehow, some way, I got to bring others along in that journey because I can't do it by myself. So it starts with me gaining the respect of those around me enough that they would say, he's got something or she's got something. I might buy into that. The first step in getting others to buy in is respect. That they respect you. Not thumping them on the head with an ideology. That's not going to work. Not yelling and screaming at their deficiency. That's not going to work. That's just going to get them to do this more. What might work, what might even have a shot, I'm not saying it for sure, but might have a shot is if they respect you. Look at this thing down here at the bottom. I will follow the 10-foot rule. The 10-foot rule, I never heard it. If it's within 10 feet of me, I'm responsible for it. If it's within 10 feet of me, I'm responsible for it. Now, that sounds overwhelming. And it's a concept. It's an attitude. But I want you to thoughtfully consider it. If it's within 10 feet of me. Another way you could say it is, once I'm aware, I'm responsible. Once I'm aware, I'm responsible. Some of you have emailed me that you've Googled my wife and I and some of the projects that we've done and some of the things that we've done literally on both sides of the North American border. And we have done some pretty cool things. But they've always come out of the genesis has always been responsibility. That once I become aware, I'm responsible. It's like right now, I'm aware of a community in northern Ontario, Canada. It's a fly-in community. Per capita, highest suicide rate in all of North America. What am I going to do about that? Well, that's not your responsibility, Ian. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I got to do something about that. I can't stand idly by and watch as kids are killing themselves by sniffing glue and kerosene and stuff like that. I can't. I can't. Now, I'm not saying that's your responsibility, but it's touched my heart. All of a sudden, it's my responsibility. 10-foot rule. So for me, in my life, the 10-foot rule encompasses all of North America. That's my 10 feet. Well, that's pretty arrogant. I don't know what it is. What's your 10 feet? What's the 10 feet you're responsible for? You living out the spirit of your job description or the letter of your job description? You living out the written laws or the unwritten laws of society and life? Which one? Marcus Aurelius was right when he said, upon the actions of one rests the fate of all. 150 years ago, even 200 years ago, or maybe even less, we didn't have a choice. We would die if we didn't act on our responsibility. Now, because we got things on our hip that can make us, we can talk to all the way around the world or send messages, or we got our iPad, or we got our Facebook, or we got our Skype, and we got all that stuff, and all of a sudden we can just drive into our garage, the thing goes down, and I'm not responsible for anything but me and my kids. And then in some instances, not even my kids, I'm just responsible for me. And then in some instances, I'm not even responsible for me. That ain't going to work, man. But I can't attack somebody else. I got to step up my game a little bit in hopes that I'll be role modeling responsibility. Well, what if nobody else picks up on it? Well, that's okay. At least I've done what I can do. See, that's where we get hooked up. We step up to our responsibility, and then no one follows, and we get all grumpy about that. And when we get grumpy about that, we get frustrated and angry and so on and so forth, and then we're not effective catalysts. So 10-foot rule. It's a concept. It's not tangible. It's a concept. 10-foot rule. If it's within 10 feet of me, I'm going to own it. All right, turn the page quick. Now remember, over the next few weeks, we'll give you some tangible ways that you can walk it out, but we got to talk about this concept. We have to introduce it. Now, some of you I know, for 30 years of your life, professionally, you've been responsible. And you're the ones that have been holding this thing together. And the rest of us need to emulate you, learn from you, take your role modeling, and walk it out. So thank you for being 30 years responsible, 25 years responsible. And you weren't just taxpayers, and you lived out the spirit of your responsibility as a citizen, the spirit of your responsibility as an employee, the spirit of your responsibility as a parent. You didn't just do the minimum, you gave your all. Well, you're the giants of our communities. No one may know who you are, no one may know your name, no one may know what you've done, but you're the giants of our community. And a catalyst for others to do the same. So a person of responsibility and a catalyst for others to do the same. In our society, we have many rights. So what are some of the rights that we enjoy in North America? Well, that I can do this. Someone's not going to bust in that door right there and drag me off to jail for what I'm saying right now. That's a right. Another right would be the right to vote or the right to a free education. And there's a number of different rights that we have, and they're inscribed in stone, laws. Both nations in North America are nations of laws. And so we have laws that protect our rights. So I would challenge you, and I mean this, write down some of the rights that we enjoy. What are some of the rights you enjoy, some of the rights I enjoy? No, don't focus on how those rights are violated and how they aren't always in place every day. And okay, got it, right? We have problems. But take a moment to write down the rights. Because I think if you do an exploration of the world today, not everybody has those. Not everybody gets those. That's not everybody's everyday circumstances. Not everybody gets those. So with all of those rights come what? So look at the next line. Responsibility. So I get all these rights, but with there's a price to pay. That price is called responsibility. And what does responsibility mean? Well, first, I alluded to it a moment ago. Responsibility means that I acknowledge I have the ability to respond. That's step one. Step number two, that I'll take that 10-foot mentality. I not only have the ability to respond, but I will respond. Step number three, I will do things that will foster respect in others so that I can be a catalyst to others taking responsibility. And if they don't, I don't attack them. I don't bang them on the head with ideology because I know that won't get them on board. What I'll do is continue to live out the spirit of my job description, the spirit of the unwritten laws of my society, in an attempt to bring one or two along to get them to step up through my role modeling. Who do you have a responsibility to? See, that's the funny thing. Who do I have a responsibility to? It's funny, I have on this bracelet here, I don't know, you can't see it. They can't pull the camera up, I don't think. But on this bracelet right here is a reminder to me, it's a tool for me of who I have a responsibility to. And it's the initials of my family, I-G-N-N-K-K. I-G-N-N-K-K. Ian, Gina, Nia, Nadia, Kian, and Cassie. Because for a portion of my life, I wasn't very responsible. For a portion of my life, I was quite irresponsible with my time, my words, my actions, my money. Quite irresponsible. And so I'm so dense that I had to actually have a moment-by-moment reminder, a tool that reminded me of my responsibility so that I could look down at it routinely and be reminded that every time I twist my hand, I'm reminded of who I have a responsibility to. And if you were to turn it over, it says, give my best. So I have a responsibility to give my best to these people who are counting on me. Now, that's just my life. And that's just because I'm such a goofball, I literally had to do it every day, right? Every moment of the day. That's how, rock-headed I am. But who do you have a responsibility to? Well, your family. If you got kids and you got a spouse or a significant other. You're somebody's daughter or son, maybe even cousin or nephew. Then you got a responsibility to the guys and gals sitting in the room with you right now if you're sitting in a group. You have a responsibility to them. Their lives are tough and challenging, and they got mortgages to pay, and they got problems with their kids, and they got life, just like you got life. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to make their journey a little easier and a little simpler by me acting on my responsibility to them? Well, who else do you have a responsibility to? Well, what about the guy or gal that gave you a job? What about the guy or gal that gave you a job 20 years ago, somebody that hired you, and you've been working there for 20 years now? Maybe you got hired 3 weeks ago, and that person that gave you a job. Don't we have a responsibility to honor their belief in us? Don't we have a responsibility to honor their thought that we could do something? Don't we have a responsibility to them? Or how about people that helped us along the way? You know, that guy or gal that gave us a break, gave us a shot, helped us when nobody else would. Don't we have a responsibility to them? How about this one? As contentious as things are today in the public arena, don't we have a responsibility to the taxpayer? You know, that guy or gal that gets a little bit taken out of their check every week, and that flows to me and to you to pay our mortgage or our rent or our car payment or whatever. You know, these are very basic terms, I know, but I also think it's stuff we don't think about. And as soon as I know for myself, as soon as I start thinking about it, it's pretty sobering to me. And it makes me go like this: damn, there's a lot of people counting on me. There's a lot of people that I'm responsible to, let alone the people I'll never see, I'll never meet, I'll never talk to, let alone the people who are at the end of that spigot of water, or that drive on that road, or that submit a plan to the planning department. See, the beauty of this thing called public service is that it's noble and honorable work. It's full of people that act on their responsibility every day. Many of you have sent me notes, emails, and the like. You've told me of your professional experience. You've told me of your desire to be the kind of person that I'm describing. And many of you have given me examples how you have been that kind of person. And I want to thank you. In a time of transformation, where responsibility isn't held in high regard, where we actually celebrate those people who've been irresponsible, I want to thank you guys. Those of you that have worked 15, 20, 25, 30 years, that have lived out the spirit of your job description and not the letter, that have tried to be good citizens, and if that means being a good parent or a good neighbor. You've served in your volunteer organization. You've put in time and energy to your place of faith. You've done all that you could at every turn to be a good person and to be a good citizen and to be a good public works employee. You're the ones that are holding this thing together. You're the ones that are even putting us in a chance where we could turn the thing around. And I want to thank you, because you don't get acknowledged enough. You don't get acknowledged enough. You've been role models to us all. Responsibility. The third competency is that we're a catalyst for responsibility, that we know how to take it on ourselves, that we'll take on responsibility, and we can help others come along in the journey. Over the next 3 weeks, we'll talk about it. We'll unpack it in some practical terms. But today we had to talk through the history of it. We had to talk about the impact of it. And we had to have, I think, hopefully, a sound and honest discussion of where we, our department, our neighborhoods, and our communities are today when it comes to this key ingredient, do an exploration of history, key ingredient to keeping free societies free and being able to build thriving communities that we would all want to live in. To build thriving communities we'd all want to live in. Upon the actions of one rests the fate of all. Last little thing. I took some quotes, a few thoughts. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. You've heard me say that. Look at what Lincoln said, or Alexander the Great. Upon the actions of one rests the fate of all. He and Marcus Aurelius. Let's have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end endure to do our duty. Abraham Lincoln. Cicero. What one has, one ought to use. Whatever he does, he ought to do it with all his might. Rockefeller. I believe that every right implies a responsibility, with every opportunity an obligation, every possession a duty. Good stuff there. Think it through. Thank you for joining us. Today was a day of reflection and contemplation. I kind of threw some punches, but they were meant in love to get you to think introspectively. So over the next 3 weeks, we can delve into this in a more tangible way and tackle this thing called becoming a catalyst for responsibility. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you later.